You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. So LSU beats Alabama on Saturday, which means they are firmly in command of the SEC West. And at this point, it would take quite a significant upset for LSU not to end up in Atlanta for the SEC championship game. Brian Kelly was asked about it today. Will he talk to his team about the SEC West race? Here's what Brian Kelly had to say.
You know, our goal is to graduate champions. So part of this is they want to be champions, and they know that there are steps along the way in this process of getting there. And so this week will be another step towards becoming a champion. So, yeah, the championships are important. That's what they're here for. And getting a class today is what they're here for. So it definitely starts. But, you know, we're not going to walk in with a PowerPoint on the SEC championship race and who's got what and all those things. But yeah, it's there. It's out there. They know what they're going for.
Okay, so Brian Kelly's not going to have a PowerPoint. We're not going to have a PowerPoint, but we're going to walk through all the scenarios. If you look at ESPN's Football Power Index, they have all the updated percentages. Paulie, you can pull this up. I know that's small. That may not actually read really well, so apologies for that. But LSU is obviously the highlighted one. And let me just zoom in then so we could see a little better. For those listening on radio, my apologies. This is the percentages, possibility of projections for LSU. So, possibility of LSU winning the division is now at 87.7% right there. That's to win the West. Winning the conference is at 17%. To make the playoff, 5%. To make the national championship game, 1.8%, and to win the national championship, just a 0.7% chance. So, long odds for all of those, but at this point, it's almost a certainty that LSU will be in Atlanta. Here's how. Right now, LSU can make it to Atlanta one of three different ways. The easiest and best way would be for LSU to win out. If LSU wins out, beating Arkansas and Texas A&M, LSU would finish 7-1 in the conference, and they would have and even if Bama's at 2 losses now, but even if Ole Miss wins out, LSU, by virtue of its head-to-head win over Ole Miss, would win the West. So that's the easiest scenario. LSU, win out, you're in. LSU would also make the playoff would make the West, the SEC championship game, would win the West and make the championship game with a win over Arkansas or A&M and an Ole Miss loss. Let's say, hypothetically, Ole Miss, who plays Alabama this weekend, loses. If Alabama beats Ole Miss, then Bama and Ole Miss each have 2 losses. If Ole Miss loses to Bama and LSU wins the West. If Ole Miss loses to Bama and LSU goes 1-1 in their remaining SEC games, you would have a 3-way tie at 6-2, but LSU would have beaten both Ole Miss and Bama, would have the tiebreaker, and would go to Atlanta. There's one other way, which would be not preferable at all, but LSU could lose to Arkansas and A&M and still make the SEC championship game. But you would have to have a 3-way tie at 5-3, meaning Bama would have to lose again, and Ole Miss would have to lose twice. It's possible that Ole Miss could lose twice. I'm not so sure I see Bama losing again, unless if Auburn could clip them. But Ole Miss this weekend plays Bama, then they're at Arkansas, then they have the Egg Bowl. So it's possible that Ole Miss could drop 2 of those games. That wouldn't surprise me. It would surprise me a little if Alabama lost again. When you look at what Bama has left, as we mentioned, they have Ole Miss this weekend, and that's in Oxford. So they got Ole Miss this weekend in Oxford, and then they have Austin Peay, and then they play the Iron Bowl. So they would have to lose to either Ole Miss or the Iron Bowl. And in that scenario, you'd have a 3-way tie at 5-3, and LSU would still go to the SEC championship game. But like we said, the best case scenario, LSU wins out, goes 10-2, they're in. But they could clinch this weekend if LSU beats Arkansas and Ole Miss loses to Alabama. LSU clinches. The college football playoff is a little more convoluted, and my belief is Clemson losing on Saturday opens the door for a potential 2-loss LSU if they win the SEC championship to be in the playoff. What is most likely to happen, Michigan, Ohio State play as undefeated teams. The winner of that game wins the Big Ten championship and is in the playoff. So if you have an undefeated Michigan or Ohio State, potentially an undefeated TCU, they would occupy 2 spots. Undefeated Clemson would have had a spot, but their strength of schedule is not going to be enough to overcome the loss to Notre Dame. Clemson would have had to have been undefeated. So Clemson losing opens up a spot because now the ACC is out. So undefeated Big Ten champ, potentially undefeated Big 12 champ TCU, 2-loss SEC champ LSU, I think would be in, along with likely a 1-loss Pac-12 champ if it were Oregon. If Oregon runs the table, goes 11-1, remember Pac-12 dropped divisions, so their championship game is just the 2 best teams in the league. So you theoretically, let's say USC beats UCLA and has 1 loss. So it's an Oregon-USC matchup in the Pac-12 championship game of 1-loss teams, and Oregon beats USC. I think Oregon as a conference champion would be in over 1-loss Georgia, which lost the SEC championship game, and a potential 1-loss Tennessee, 1-loss Clemson, and 1-loss Michigan or Ohio State. Basically, if you're LSU, you're kind of rooting for chaos. You'd really like to see TCU lose a game as well. So you don't have undefeated conference champions. Because if you have undefeated Power 5 champions, they're in. Just book it, they're in. But there oddly is a path for LSU, but it would certainly include winning out and having an SEC championship game win over unbeaten and number 1 ranked Georgia. That doesn't feel super likely, but neither did us having this conversation less than a month ago when LSU got pounded by Tennessee in Baton Rouge. The New Year's 6 is infinitely more likely. If LSU ends up as the top-ranked SEC team outside of the playoff, they would go to the Sugar Bowl. If LSU drops, let's say, below Tennessee, let's say Tennessee finishes 11-1, and LSU, let's say, goes to the SEC championship game, loses to Georgia, and drops below Tennessee, Tennessee would go Sugar, LSU would go Orange, and likely play Clemson. So you're really starting to narrow down what those likelihood and scenarios are for LSU. But most importantly, this weekend, beat Arkansas, have Alabama beat Ole Miss, and you clinch the West. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.